"How are you doing?" That Daniel's voice came out rough, half whisper, half surrender, because what he was seeing didn't make sense. He'd come home early, keys still in his fist, expecting the usual soundtrack of a house in crisis, 3 babies, wailing his own heartbeat, pounding like a drum. For weeks, the triplets, Noah, Grace, and Lily, had screamed through every bottle, every rocking chair, every expensive gadget. 2 sitters had quit. Daniel had tried pacing the hallway until his knees ached, bouncing until his arms burned, shushing until his throat went dry. Nothing worked. But now, right there on the back lawn, Monique, the new housekeeper, sat on a faded blanket with the babies tucked against her like warm little weights. Her palm moved in slow circles on Noah's back. Grace's tiny fingers curled around Monique's sweater seam. Lily's eyelids fluttered, then settled. The air felt different, quieter, softer, like the whole yard had exhaled. Daniel didn't step forward at first. He just watched, stunned, as Monique hummed low and steady, pointing to a bird on the fence like it was the most important thing in the world. The babies' faces, usually red and furious, were calm, almost happy. Monique finally glanced up, meeting Daniel's eyes without flinching. "They don't need perfection," she said gently. "They need you to be here." Daniel swallowed hard. His pride had nowhere to hide. He took 1 step closer, then another, as if approaching something sacred. "Please," he said, voice cracking, "don't stop." "And can you show me how?" Daniel's "please, show me" didn't come out of nowhere. It came from weeks of living inside a storm. Before Monique, the house had been nothing but motion and noise. Noah's cries would start, first sharp, panicked. Then Grace would join in with a higher, frantic pitch, and Lily would follow, like the final siren that broke whatever strength Daniel had left. The sound didn't just fill the rooms, it crawled under his skin. He'd stand at the kitchen counter at 2:17 a.m., staring at 3 half-finished bottles lined up like evidence hands, trembling from caffeine and exhaustion. His shirt would be damp, where a baby's tears and spit-up had soaked through, and his eyes would burn like he'd been staring into headlights. He tried everything people told him to try. White noise machines, swaddles that promised instant calm, a rocking chair that cost more than his first car. Nothing lasted more than a minute. The more he rushed faster steps, harder, bouncing, louder, shushing, the worse it got, like the babies could feel his fear, and answered it with their own. 2 sitters didn't even make it to payday. The last one had stood by the front door diaper bag, still on her shoulder mouth, tight and pale. "I'm sorry," she'd said, not meeting his eyes. "I can't do this again tomorrow." After the door clicked shut, Daniel had leaned his forehead against the wall, breathing through his teeth, while 3 tiny voices shredded the silence behind him. He wasn't angry at them. He was angry at himself, at how helpless he felt in his own home. So when he saw Monique on that blanket and the babies finally quiet, Daniel didn't just feel surprised. He felt rescued. Monique didn't rush in with some fancy method. She didn't lecture Daniel or act like the babies were a problem to solve. She just moved calm, steady, like she had all the time in the world. The next afternoon, Daniel watched her carry the girls and Noah out to the backyard, one by one, cradled close to her chest. The sun was mild, the grass still cool. She spread an old quilt on the ground, the kind with faded squares that looked like it had held 100 stories already. Then she sat down and patted the space beside her. "Out here," she murmured, "mostly to the babies we breathe first." Noah fussed the moment his back touched the blanket. Monique didn't flinch. She lifted him, tucked his cheek against her shoulder, and rocked so slowly Daniel almost didn't notice the movement. Her humming wasn't a song you'd hear on the radio, just a warm, low sound that seemed to match the rhythm of her heartbeat. Grace's face tightened like she was about to cry, and Monique leaned in close. "I see you," she said softly, brushing a finger across Grace's tiny forehead. "You're okay. I've got you." Then, like a magician revealing nothing up her sleeve, she pointed toward the fence. "Look, Bird." Lily's eyes followed the motion. Her fists unclenched. Her breathing softened. Daniel stood frozen at the patio door, feeling something in his chest loosen. Something he didn't realize had been knotted for weeks. Monique glanced back at him, not unkind. "You keep trying to win against them," she said. "Come sit. Let's just be with them." And for the first time in a long time, Daniel stepped outside. And the house stayed quiet behind him. Daniel thought babies were babies' 3 tiny storms that hit the house all at once. But sitting on the patio step, he started to see what Monique saw: 3 different people. Noah didn't just cry. He searched. His eyes darted, his fists chopped the air like he was trying to grab the world and couldn't find a handle. Monique held him a little firmer, one hand supporting the back of his head, the other pressing him close so he could feel her warmth. "You need a strong hug," she whispered, and Noah's shoulders dropped, like someone had finally turned off an alarm inside him. Grace was different. Grace needed room. When Monique cradled her too tight, Grace's mouth pinched and her legs kicked tiny, furious protests. So Monique loosened her hold, letting Grace stretch out one small palm, resting against Monique's forearm, like a choice, not a trap. "That's it," Monique breathed. "You like to decide." And Lily watched everything. She didn't melt from rocking or shushing. She calmed when Monique gave her something to study: the sway of a tree branch, the flutter of a leaf, the soft clap of Monique's hands as she counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, like a metronome for Lily's breathing. Daniel's throat tightened. He'd been trying to force one solution onto 3 separate hearts. He'd been loud when they needed quiet, fast when they needed slow. And Monique, without making a show of it, kept adjusting, listening, responding like she'd known them for years. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time he didn't feel like he was losing. He felt like he was finally learning their language. That night, Daniel stood alone in the nursery, staring at the clutter, like it was mocking him: 3 white noise machines glowing in the dark, a bassinet that promised soothing motion, a shelf of swaddles folded like uniforms. He'd spent hundreds of dollars chasing quiet, and still his babies had cried, like they were calling for someone who couldn't hear them. He heard Monique's voice in his head, and felt his face heat with shame. Earlier, he'd watched her settle Noah with one slow breath, like she was lending him her lungs. Daniel had leaned in and asked, almost accusing, "What's your trick?" Monique didn't even look offended. She kept her hand on Noah's back, steady as a heartbeat. There isn't one, she'd said. Then she finally met Daniel's eyes, soft, but not gentle, in a way that let him off the hook. They can feel when you're just doing a job, when you're trying to make them stop. Babies don't speak words, Mr. Daniel, but they know energy. Daniel had swallowed hard. "So I'm making it worse." "You're scared," she said, plain and honest, and they hear that loud. Now, in the quiet nursery, Daniel sat in the rocking chair he'd hated for failing him. His shoulders sagged. He didn't feel like an executive or a problem solver or a man with answers. He felt like a father who'd been sprinting in place. From the hallway, Monique's humming drifted in low, steady reel. Daniel pressed a hand to his chest as if to calm his own racing heart first. For the first time, he understood the thing he'd been missing wasn't another device. It was him fully there. Daniel found Monique in the hallway. A few minutes later, the soft glow from the nursery spilling across her face. She was wiping her hands on a dish towel, like she'd just finished something ordinary, like she hadn't just done what every expert and every expensive gadget in the house couldn't. "Monique," he said, and his voice cracked on her name. She paused, turning slowly. Her eyes were calm, but watchful, like she'd seen grown men fall apart before, and didn't judge them for it. Daniel lifted both hands, palms out, not to stop her, more like he was trying to hold the moment in place. "I'm not mad," he blurted, as if she might be bracing for it. I'm asking you, Don't stop doing what you're doing. Monique didn't move. The towel stayed twisted in her fingers. You mean the yard? She asked. I mean everything Daniel said. He swallowed throat tight. The way you hold them. The way you talk to them. The way you don't fight them. He let out a shaky breath and looked past her shoulder at the nursery door where the silence felt almost unreal. When I walk in there, it's like I'm carrying a fire. They feel it, and they burn with me. Monique's expression softened. Not pity, not smugness. Just human. You're tired, she said quietly. Daniel nodded once hard. His eyes stung, and he hated that it was happening. I need to understand, he whispered. Can I watch you? Can I stay close and learn what you're seeing that I'm missing? For a beat, Monique studied him. Then she stepped aside and opened the nursery door wider. Come on, she said. Slow feet, quiet breath. Let's start there. Daniel didn't even realize he was bargaining until the words started spilling out fast, desperate, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he paused. I'll raise your pay, he said, stepping into the doorway, as if his body could block her from walking away. Whatever you're making now, we'll fix it. Benefits too. Anything you need. His throat worked around the pride he used to wear like armor. Just, please don't leave. Monique's eyebrows lifted just slightly like she'd heard that kind of offer before, but she didn't smile. She looked past him into the nursery where 3 tiny chests rose and fell in a rare, fragile piece. Money helps, she said, honest as rain, but that's not what you're really asking me for. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. His shoulders sagged. The silence between them felt louder than the crying ever had. I want you to teach me, he admitted, voice low. Not to hire you to fix my kids. He swallowed hard, eyes glossy. To teach me how to be their dad. Because when they cry, I panic. And when I panic, they panic. And I don't know how to stop the cycle. Monique studied him for a long moment. Daniel stood there, hands clenched at his sides, breathing like he'd just run up a flight of stairs. Finally, she nodded once, small but steady. All right, she said. But you're not watching from the doorway. Daniel blinked. What? You're getting on the floor, Monique told him, already moving toward the crib. You're learning how to hold Noah without squeezing your fear into him. You're learning Grace likes choices. You're learning Lily needs something to focus on. She glanced back, eyes firm. And you're going to mess up. That's fine. Just don't run. Daniel lowered himself to the carpet like it was a confession. Yes, ma'am, he whispered, and for the first time he meant it. The lessons didn't stay in the nursery. They followed Daniel into the rest of his life like a spotlight he couldn't ignore. The next morning, he stood in his closet with a suit jacket in one hand and his phone in the other, staring at an email marked Client Dinner Mandatory. His thumb hovered. He could already hear the old version of himself saying, You can't cancel. You're needed. From the living room came Monique's low hum and the soft, uneven giggle Noah made when someone got the rhythm right. Daniel exhaled slow, like she'd taught him. Then he typed, I won't make it tonight. Family obligation. His heart thumped as he hit send like he'd just jumped off something high. At 5:12 p.m., his assistant called. Daniel, are you sure they're expecting? I'm sure, he said, voice steady. He looked through the doorway and saw Grace, kicking happily on the blanket. Lily watching the ceiling fan, like it was a miracle Noah tucked against Monique's shoulder. Tell them I'll reschedule. He started coming home earlier. Not once, every day. The first week he walked in, still holding his work face jaw tight, shoulders high. Monique would glance up and tap her chest gently. Breathe. So he'd set his keys down like they were fragile drop to the floor and let the babies crawl their chaos toward him. He learned their cues the way you learn a song, by repetition, by listening, by getting it wrong and trying again. One night his phone buzzed with a travel itinerary. He stared at it, then at 3 sleeping faces. No, he whispered to the screen. Not this time. It didn't happen in a big movie-perfect moment. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind Daniel used to miss without noticing. He came in through the front door with grocery bags cutting into his fingers, the late afternoon light slanting across the hallway. For a second, he braced himself, out of habit, jaw-tight, shoulders up, waiting for the old chaos to crash over him. Instead, he heard something else, a soft squeal, then a second, then the quick patter of tiny hands and knees on hardwood. Daddy Grace's voice wasn't a word, not really, more like a bright little sound that carried his name anyway. Noah followed, wobbling on chubby legs, arms out like he was reaching for a lifeline. Lily wasn't far behind, eyes locked on Daniel's face the way she always watched for truth. Daniel froze with the bag still in his hands. All three of them reached him at once. Noah pressed his forehead into Daniel's thigh like he belonged there. Grace wrapped her arms around his knee and squeezed hard, grunting with effort. Lily climbed up his leg, determined, until Daniel dropped the bags and sank to the floor to catch her. They piled into his lap, warm, heavy, real, three small bodies breathing against his chest. Daniel's breath hitched. His hands hovered for half a second, afraid to break the spell, then settled one arm around Noah's back, one hand steadying Grace, his fingertips brushing Lily's hair. From across the room, Monique leaned on the doorway and said quietly, "Look at you." Daniel didn't answer right away. He just held them, eyes wet, feeling the weight of every night he'd failed, and every day he'd chosen to come home anyway. Then he whispered into their hair, almost like a prayer, "I'm here. I'm right here." The real test came in the middle of the night when nobody was watching, and there were no daylight victories to lean on. At 1:43 a.m., the baby monitor snapped Daniel awake, with a sound that sliced clean through sleep. Grace's cry, thin, terrified, the kind that didn't ask for a bottle. It begged for safety. Daniel's heart lurched, and for a split second his old panic tried to grab the wheel. Then he heard Monique in his head like a steady hand on his shoulder. Slow feet. Quiet breath. He swung his legs out of bed, planted his bare feet on the floor, and forced air into his lungs. One slow inhale, one slow exhale, before he even touched the doorknob. The hallway felt cold. The house held its breath. In the nursery, Grace was flailing in her crib cheeks, wet eyes wide and unfocused, like she was still trapped in whatever dream had grabbed her. Daniel didn't rush. He leaned in close, let her see his face first. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered, low and warm. "It's just us. You're safe." He lifted her carefully, supporting her head, holding her firm without squeezing, then pressed her against his chest so she could feel his heartbeat. He swayed slow as a pendulum. "Breathe with me," he murmured, even though she couldn't understand the words. His breath became the instruction. Grace's cries softened to hiccups. Her fingers found his shirt and clung. From the doorway, Monique watched, silent. When Grace's eyelids finally sank shut, Daniel looked up, exhausted, trembling but steady. Monique's eyes shined in the dim light. She nodded once, proud and sure. "You've got her," she mouthed, and for the first time Daniel believed it. By the end of that week, the house didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a place people actually lived. Daniel came home on Friday to the smell of roasted chicken and something sweet cinnamon maybe warming the air. The overhead lights were off. A lamp in the corner made the living room glow honey gold. Noah sat on the rug, banging a wooden spoon against a pot like it was a drum. Grace squealed every time the music got louder. Lily watched Daniel's face the second he walked in, like she was checking whether he'd brought the old storm back with him. He crouched low, opened his arms, and kept his shoulders soft. "Hey, crew," he whispered. Lily crawled straight into him. Grace followed, laughing so hard she hiccuped. Noah leaned his forehead against Daniel's chest like a greeting. Daniel pressed his cheek to Noah's hair and breathed in clean, baby shampoo, warm skin home. Monique appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. Then she nodded toward a folded list on the counter. Daniel picked it up. A simple schedule. Feeding notes. Little reminders written in Monique's neat handwriting. Grace likes choices. Lily needs something to focus on. Noah calms with firm pressure. He swallowed. I hired someone to handle the cleaning, he said, almost shy. I want you focused on them, and on teaching me, not scrubbing floors. Monique studied him for a beat, then her mouth softened. That's a real decision, she said quietly. That night they ate at the table, messy, loud laughing, and when a spoon hit the floor, nobody flinched. Daniel just picked it up, kissed Grace's forehead, and said, It's okay, we've got time. On Sunday evening, Daniel stood at the sink, rinsing tiny bowls, watching the backyard through the window. The triplets were on a blanket again, Noah chewing on a soft toy, Grace clapping at nothing, Lily tracking a drifting leaf like it held a secret. Monique sat nearby, not hovering, just present. The house was still noisy. Babies are babies, but it wasn't the kind of noise that made his chest tighten. It was life. His phone buzzed on the counter. Another work message. Another urgent request that used to pull him like a hook. Daniel stared at the screen, then turned it face down with 2 fingers like he was closing a chapter. He dried his hands slowly, walked out back, and lowered himself onto the grass. Noah scooted toward him first. Grace followed, laughing when Daniel made a ridiculous face. Lily crawled into his lap and rested her cheek on his shirt as if checking that he was real. Monique didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Daniel swallowed hard, blinking against the sting in his eyes. He looked at his kids, 3 separate little hearts, and realized the truth he'd been dodging. Love isn't a title you earn once. It's a choice you make over and over, especially when you're tired. Especially when nobody applauds. Especially when your phone keeps buzzing. He leaned down and whispered, I'm not going anywhere. And this time he meant it like a promise he'd keep. The people who need you most don't need perfection. They need presence. Not the busy version of you. Not the later version of you. The real you right now. Because one day what you'll miss isn't an email or a meeting. It's the small hands that used to reach for you. If this story hit home, tell me in the comments, when was the last time you chose presence over pressure? And if you want more stories like this, real, emotional, and grounded, subscribe to the channel and stay with us.